Lynn Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hey there, and a good morning to you. It is Friday, the 17th of May in the year of not your Lord, 2013. Joining me today is a gentleman who's been here before, and it's always a pleasure to see him. From the left coast, Dennis Palumbo, a Pittsburgh native. You grew up here, went to school here, high school?
I grew up here in Penn Hills and then Churchill. And then I went to Pitt and graduated from Pitt. So I'm disgustingly Pittsburgh through and through. And even though I've lived in California, in Los Angeles for the past 40 years, I just love Pittsburgh. I always have. And so that's why I set my new series of books in my hometown.
Okay. Well, your bio is so fascinating. We're here to talk about Dennis's latest book, Night Terrors. Now, I got to tell you, this is one of those page turners. If you start it late at night, figure that you're not going to, get to bed at a reasonable hour. But before we get to that, I find you fascinating as a person yourself. So let's do a little biography before we get to the book. Because your biographies, in many ways, lead you to, to being a writer of... Do you call these mysteries?
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many
genres. I know. My publisher, Poison Pen Press, which, by the way, just publishes mysteries, calls it a mystery thriller. And I think it's probably more in that vein. There's more thrills than your average whodunit.
Okay, so whodunit would be different from a mystery.
Yeah, the categories are like cozy mysteries, like the Agatha Christie types, and then thrillers like James Patterson or Michael Connelly that are like mine. They're slightly police procedural, very character-driven, lots of twists and turns, and then there's the spy genre and, other ones. But I would call it a mystery thriller.
Okay, a mystery thriller it is, and a whodunit.
Yeah, you do. There is clues and surprises.
Your books always, you really come out of left field on your whodunit.
Well, that's the problem with each book. I have so many readers now who say, oh, I love the twists of the last one. And each one I think, oh, my God, what am I going to do this time?
I bet.
And I so often write myself into these little cul-de-sacs. The Bridge to Nowhere? I often have, my books are halfway through and I'm there, how do I get to the other side?
Well, here I said we were going to talk your biography, but you just said something that fascinates me, that you find yourself writing yourself into a cul-de-sac. I'm curious, as I'm reading the book, I'm thinking, does he outline this before he ever starts? He's got like some crazy, Rorschach test of an outline. Rube Goldberg more like an outline.
You would think, wouldn't you?
Or does he just get on and see where he ends up?
That's what I do.
Is that what you do?
The challenge for me is I'll find in my head a first sentence, like the first sentence of Night Terrors, and I literally have no idea what the second sentence is. I don't know what I'm doing. And so what I do is I make it up as I go along. And the thing is, I like writing. And so if you do it the way I do it, you're going to be rewriting a lot. Because first of all, I never know who the killer is till about halfway.
You don't know?
No, till about halfway through the book. And then I go, okay, I think it's going to be this person. So then I have to go back and seed in all the clues. So there's a lot of back and forth. because it's sort of woven like a tapestry.
Okay, right.
I don't outline it all. I have no idea usually who the victim is at the beginning. I don't even know who's going to get killed. And then I don't know who's going to be the killer. And so I have to find out. I'm more interested in character. See, with Night Terrors, all I knew was the FBI was going to ask my hero, Daniel Rinaldi, who's a psychologist and a trauma expert. The FBI was going to ask my hero to help treat a retired FBI profiler who couldn't sleep at night.
Okay, so
that's
that much
all I knew.
That's all
I knew is because I remember reading about night terrors, which is a condition that primarily has always been a pediatric diagnosis. Children waking up with night terrors. And what's significant is that in the last 10 or 15 years, there's been a growing diagnosis and treatment in adults of night terrors. I have a few patients myself. And most social scientists think it's because life has become so uncertain, so terrifying. I mean, we have a faltering economy, terrorism, pandemics, natural disasters like earthquakes and tsunamis. Plus, we have 24-hour information about all these things.
Well, now, wait a minute. See, gee whiz.
I know.
See, I'm like you. I started saying, and let's talk about your biography. And here we are. We're off and running someplace else. I have no... Wait a minute. So night terrors, what's to differentiate? Okay, so all those horrible things are happening. So you get nightmare. What's the difference between a nightmare and a...
Well, the difference is that a nightmare happens in REM sleep. REM sleep, rapid eye movement. And so you remember the images. You go up the next day and go, gee, why was I riding an elephant? The thing about night terrors that scientists don't quite understand is they happen in stage 4 of the sleep cycle, which is the most tranquil part. And the other thing is you don't remember why you were you don't wake up and go, oh my God, a demon was eating my foot. You have no memory of anything. All you know is you're filled with dread, you're sweating, you wake up screaming, your heart's pounding, your adrenaline, and sometimes people wake up and they find themselves like on the other side of the room, like they got out of their bed and ran.
Yeah.
But no memory of what it was that terrified them. So the thing that makes night terrors so, and it's funny, down through history, night terrors have been recorded, and most of the time they've been attributed to like demons or whatever. But what interested me was the idea that adults are getting diagnosed with it.
Okay.
So I thought to myself, well, which adult would be most likely to have a lot of night terrors? And I thought, can you imagine what an FBI profiler hears every day?
A guy who specializes in serial killers.
So all he does all day long is talk to Ted Bundy.
Think of the images in that guy's head.
So I'm thinking, man, this guy's never going to sleep again. And so what I got, that's where the idea came from.
Okay.
I'm going to treat a guy, my character, Daniel Rinaldi, is going to treat a guy who can't sleep at night. And then I go, okay, well, nobody cares about psychology. We don't want to see his treatment. What if the person he's treating is on a killer's hit list? And that's how the idea formed.
Okay.
Once I knew that my patient was going to be a potential victim of someone, I knew I had a story.
Okay.
I just didn't know anything else about it.
Okay. So Dennis Palumbo says he writes the first sentence and he doesn't even know who the killer is going to be and who the killee
who the victim is. Yeah.
Who the victim's going to be. So you wrote this, chapter 1. The killer and I sat together in the back seat of the late model Range Rover, our shoulders just touching. So you wrote that, and you swear you didn't know where you were going
I had no idea where I was going.
You didn't know where the Range Rover was.
No.
You didn't know who the guy whose shoulders...
No, I had no idea.
Jeez, that's unbelievable.
And then I do something brilliant.
That's like doing a high wire act without a net.
Well, see, it would be if it weren't so. There's a certain simplicity because I wrote that sentence and I said, the book before Fever Dream happens in a heat wave. So I thought, this one should have a snowstorm.
Oh, God, does it snow.
So that's all I did. I just went, okay, well, I don't know where I am or what I'm doing, but it's cold and snowy. Only because the last book was so sweaty.
I got cold reading it.
Everybody says that. Everybody says, gee, I put on a sweater.
I know, it's so cold. It's so cold during this book. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, fascinating stuff. I have one more question about night terrors. Is that the same thing, and I've heard of this, where people wake and they're like, or maybe they're not awake, but they're like paralyzed. They can't move. Do you know about that?
That sometimes is a function of any number of things. Night terrors, nightmares do that to you too. Some people with sleep apnea have that. So it's just there's a whole range of sleep disorders, and sleep terrors is one, or night terrors is just one of them.
Good God. Okay. So that's the book, Night Terrors. This is the author, Dennis Palumbo. He might have, you might have noted that you said at one point, I've treated people with, which brings us to another aspect of your biography. Mm-hmm. You're
I'm a psychologist. Yeah,
and your lead character is?
Yes.
Okay.
The thing is, I'm an Italian American from Pittsburgh who went to Pitt. I'm a psychotherapist. I have a beard. And,
you look like you were supposed to be.
Well, the thing is, my lead character has all those exact traits, so it's not that much of a stretch. The only difference is he's real brave and resourceful, and I'm not. I would run away from almost everything he's involved with.
He's got your No.
Daniel. Daniel. His name is He's named after my son.
I mix you up all the time.
I know.
It seems to me the last time I was interviewing you, I kept calling you Daniel, and Daniel Rinaldi is here.
Yes.
Wrong. That's the character. Dennis Palumbo is here.
Yes. Daniel is the character. He's named after, as I said, he's named after my son. Yeah. But a lot of people write me emails and go, "Dear Daniel," because it's also because the books are told in the first person.
Well, that's true, too.
And so that, I think, allows the reader to make that conflation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good Lord. Okay, now, I swear I'm going to get to this guy's bio. So, you go to Pitt. What gets you to California?
Well, I was a writing major at Pitt. And so very soon after I graduated, my first wife and I came out to California because I wanted to get into film and television. And it was very hard breaking in. She was working, teaching at a Catholic school in Watts, and I think they were paying her in communion hosts. It was, and I was selling school supplies over the phone.
Where were you? Were you living under a bridge?
No,
somewhere?
We were living in a real dinky apartment in West Hollywood. It's like there'd be noise at night at 2, 3 in the morning. You open the window. Oh God, another cokehead in the car. All right,
Yeah.
And it's like, how many murders on our street? That kind of thing. And so I lived about half a mile from the famous Comedy Store on the Sunset Strip where all the famous stand-up comics got started. And so I was trying to break in. I was writing scripts, but people weren't reading them. And so I thought, well, since a bunch of producers and showrunners are in the audience at the Comedy Store, I'll start doing stand-up. And I was a terrible stand-up comic.
I mean, how could you just decide I'm going to do stand-up?
Well,
anybody just told? Did you think you were a funny guy?
No, I thought I had good material. I thought I had good material, and so they had audition night at the Comedy Store, which is Monday night.
God, you got guts.
And you sign up, and anyone who signs up on Monday night can get up on stage, and they have a yellow light. The hook they used to have in vaudeville? They have a yellow light that if it flashes, it means you suck beyond endurance.
Shut up and get off.
Get off the stage.
Okay, so how long did you last?
I lasted about 3 minutes the first time. And the yellow light went on, and I said, "Is that for me?" And from way in the back, the club owner went, "Oh, yeah." So I kept going back, and I got better and better times. It was funny. The only person I used to get these times like Tuesday at 1:30 a.m. And the audience would be two drunks, a waitress, and the comic waiting to go on after me. And the funny thing is, the comic waiting to go on after me invariably was the same guy. I don't know what happened to him. His name was Dave Letterman, something like that.
Are you kidding me?
And he always went on after me. And I bombed, and he bombed worse.
Are you kidding
Absolutely.
me?
And then he actually went on, as we all know. I don't know what happened to him, but he probably did pretty well for himself. But
did you ever stay to hear his?
Oh, absolutely.
Was he at what you thought it was pretty terrible?
I thought he was smarter than the audience. He had that kind of act, very much like Larry David. Larry David, the audience hated him too. And his material.
So was he doing this kind of thing?
He was doing
at the same
stand-up
time?
too in New York, where no one liked him. I mean, they just hated him. And
well, he's a guy you sort of hate on
well, you know
sight.
the character on Curb Your Enthusiasm?
Yes,
that's who he
him.
is.
I know. He's awful.
But that, to me, that was part of his act, and I think the audience didn't quite understand that. And when I was doing this was the time of Freddie Prinze and David Brenner, and I got to know all those guys. I mean, it was.
Were they nice to you?
I found them all to be pretty nice. I mean, comics on the whole are fairly hostile. But
they're hostile and they're depressed. And
and they're depressed and unhappy, and they're depressed and unhappy, and
they're miserable people.
The thing is, you got to feel badly for them because they're going up to get laughs from. So you have to remember, if you go up with a guitar, people go, "Aw." If you are a stand-up comic, the audience sits back with their arms folded and says, "Okay, make me laugh."
That's true.
I mean, the audience is kind of hostile to begin with. And then what happens is you become well known and it flips and there's this huge acceptance.
So
Richard
you come
Pryor
on stage
used to
and they're
come
already
out,
laughing.
and they're laughing already. I remember one time I was at the store and Richard Pryor came in and just said to Mitzi Shore, who ran the place, "Can I do a set?" And she went, "Sure." And he would go up on stage. As soon as he said hi, the audience went insane. And I thought to myself, now that's a funny hi. I mean, that's a guy who knows how to say it.
You know what? That's like rich people never have to pay for anything.
Yeah.
And poor people do. It's
That's
the same
right.
kind of thing.
That's
Life
right.
ain't fair.
I know. That's very, very fun. And finally, what happened, to be honest, is I came off the stage one time, and I had a pretty good set. People laughed and stuff like that. I was a regular by then. I had worked there for about a year.
Were you making any money doing
No. I was selling. You didn't
it's
get
volunteer.
paid. It's
oh,
volunteer.
Yeah, that's right. You just.
But I was selling school supplies during the day, and at night I was doing stand-up, and I was also selling jokes to stand-up comics.
Okay.
And that's a whole other story in itself. I mean, I remember one time this old comic hired me, and I had to meet with him in his steam room. Oh. And so I have this sheet of paper with my jokes on it, and the ink is starting to run down, because the page is getting damp, and I'm trying to read these jokes. And so anyway, I had a pretty good set, and I came off, and a comic I liked a lot, a guy named Kip Adata, said, "Hey, that was a pretty good set," And it was interesting to me because I realized it didn't really matter to me that I had done well. I still just wanted to be a writer. And so finally the club owner, and I owe her a lot, Mitzi Shore, sat me down one time and said, "You're a terrible comic, but you're a good writer." And she, without my knowing it, she had asked Gabe Kaplan to come and watch my work. And so when I came off stage, he said, "Come and meet me across at a coffee shop," and we did.
And Gabe Kaplan at that point was...
He was huge. He was in a show called Welcome Back, Kotter.
He was already... Okay,
he was a big star.
Okay,
that was the first. It had just been on for the first year, and there was a lot of controversy because it was banned in Boston and, a lot of other stuff.
What?
It was banned in Boston
Why?
because the Sweat Hogs were disrespectful to their teachers. The ABC affiliate in Boston were not allowed to run Welcome Back, Kotter the first year. Not too many people remember that. But it made a big controversy and actually helped.
And gave it a lot of publicity, of course.
And so finally, Gabe looked at some of my material and he read through it about 4 or 5 times, didn't say a word. And then he said to me, you're a funny guy. He didn't laugh. He just said I was a funny guy. He said, "I'll call you and you can write for me."
So you ended up writing for Welcome Back, Kotter.
Well, here's how that happened. I didn't hear from him for 11 months.
Right.
And then he called one day on a Thursday and said, "I'm going on a countrywide tour on Saturday. You want to come with me and write my material?" And so what I did was I spent 3 months on the road with Gabe. We would go to a city, and then I'd read all the...
You mean where he's doing stand-up?
Yeah, he's doing stand-up. He had his act. But then, as you know, when a comic comes to a town, they like to use local references.
Right.
So for example, if we were coming today, I'd read everything about the mayor and the mayor's race and all the street names. So then Gabe would go up and said, "Oh God, I was just driving down Smithfield Street," and the audience would go crazy.
Just loves it, right?
So that's what I did for a while, and then after that summer, I had an agent by then. I was working with another writer, Mark Evanier, and we were trying to break into sitcom writing. And it's such an interesting thing. On the second season of Welcome Back, Kotter, one of the story editors on the show was a young writer named Gary Shandling. And he got in a big car accident, which laid him up for 6 months. So they needed writers. So because I knew Gabe, Mark and I got on staff on Welcome Back, Kotter, and it was a real interesting moment because Gary, while he's in the hospital, decided he wanted to be a stand-up comic and didn't want to be a writer. So he didn't come back, and his career took off because of his car accident. So we went in different directions. I've known Gary for 30 years. We still have lunch once every 6 months, and he complains about his hair, and I complain about everything else. And so, but it was a very funny thing, and I was very lucky at a young age, to be on Welcome Back, Kotter. And right before we went on staff, we also wrote the first episode of Love Boat. And while people laugh when I tell them that, but I got a 13-cent residual check from our episode from the Balkans.
From the Balkans?
Yes. Yes, we're spreading American culture all over the world.
Isn't that odd? I twice actually had a clip on like America's Funniest Home Videos or some show like that when I was a television reporter, some outtake that they used. And I once got a residual check from, I think it was Gambia.
Oh my God.
I know, and it was better than yours. It was more than 13 cents, and I remember thinking, well, how the hell it was years later, how the hell would I ever know if that had... Well, who are these honest people who actually end up
Well, the
giving you
Guild
that
actually
money?
tracks it. I mean, I still get, of course, residuals from My Favorite Year. And not only the...
Now, wait, you can't just drop that.
All right.
That's a wonderful movie.
Well, thank you very much. I think the credit for that movie goes to Peter O'Toole. I get praise for a lot. It was co-written by me and Norman Steinberg, who's another Pittsburgher, by the way. But I think without Peter O'Toole,
he was
would not have. He was just... I never wrote it for him.
Everything was brilliant in that. All of the actors. Who's the young guy?
Oh, Mark Lynn Baker.
Mark Lynn Baker. And his parents.
Oh, yeah. Lainey Kazan was his mother. I forget who played the dad.
Oh, God, how funny.
Yeah, she was great. And they made a musical out of it. It was at Lincoln Center in New York, or Kennedy Center, I'm sorry, in New York. And it wasn't a real big success in New York, but it's become the hit of like the high school circuit.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, so I get residuals from that too. It's very funny.
These little surprising checks
come in the mail.
I love it. Okay, I'm going to take a break. Is this guy interesting or what? Isn't it wonderful? Your bio makes a good book. So when you're writing a memoir?
Oh, please.
Everybody writes memoirs.
Not this boy.
Not that boy. Okay. We'll take a quick break and be back with Dennis Palumbo, not Daniel Rinaldi, but we'll get to Daniel Rinaldi.
More is on the way with Lynn Cullen Live.
Pittsburgh City Paper's annual summer guide is available now. Pick one up today for the most extensive list of summer activities in Western PA and beyond. Plus, the Marshall Tucker Band, Josh Ritter, Styx, Hill House, the St. Nicholas Greek Food Festival, and a look at outdoor dining options in the Berg. Pittsburgh City Paper, available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania. On the web at pghcitypaper.com and on your smartphone at citypapermobile.com.
Okay, I don't know about you, but I have been in the garden. Finally, the weather sort of evened out a little bit for a day or two, and you can do your gardening, and it's so much, oh God, talk about therapy. For so many of us, it is the greatest thing you can do. Now, you need stuff like plants, or flowers, or a bush. And to get the flowers, the plants, and the bush, I'm telling you where to go. The Urban Gardener. It is marvelous. 1901 Brighton Road, right near the Mexican War Streets, and it specializes in people who have yards like mine. Little urban yards, gardeners. They will do design for you. They'll help you lay it out. They'll even maintain it if you're lazy. On the other hand, I love this place because they have unusual things. Truly unusual things. And they're such a bunch of nice folks, helpful women there. That's what you're going to find. Check out their website, urbangardenerpgh.com. And when you go and when you buy some stuff and when you're checking out, drop my name because there's money in it. I swear to God. Say Lynn Cullen, you get a discount. What's not to like?
It's warming up outside, so get to Little's for all your spring needs. Little's has everything for men, women, and children to stay in style for this upcoming hot summer. Lots of great colors from Dansko, New Balance, Steve Madden, and much, much more. Don't forget to come visit this season's colorful handbag selection as well. Little Shoes, Pittsburgh's largest family shoe store, 5850 Forbes Avenue in Squirrel Hill.
You're listening to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Once again, here's Lynn Cullen.
Right, but he's here all the time. I saw him just the other day.
I'm sure he is.
Hey. All right. Hey. God, he's got sharp elbows, too, I'll tell you. Dennis Palumbo, my guest. All right, so we already know he's written great movies. He's written great sitcoms. He's blah, blah, blah. He's done stand-up. He's... Okay. But I said earlier, you're a therapist. How does that... What?
Yes. You probably want to know what happened, right?
What happened?
I get that a lot.
Jeez.
Well, the first thing you have to remember is I'm old. That has a lot to do with
You're not old.
story.
You're younger than I am.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm
yes,
not.
you are.
No, I'm
okay,
not.
fine.
All right. I know how old I am. And so anyway, in show business, I was 24 when I was on Welcome Back, Kotter. I was 27 when I wrote the first draft of My Favorite Year. You know, so those were like 40 years ago. So there's a long time. I had a whole career in show business. But to be serious for literally 10, 12 seconds, when my first marriage ended, I went into therapy and I kind of fell in love with the process. And so I started volunteering at psychiatric facilities and low-fee clinics and taking courses. The thing is, you know, when you're a screenwriter, I had gone from writing television after I wrote... I was on a couple series, but once I wrote the first draft of My Favorite Year and then started working on a couple other films, I was mostly a screenwriter. So I could do what I wanted during the day. And so I could I could have been a dentist. I could have fit another career in there, you know. And so I started taking classes, primarily out of, you know, just interest, intellectual interest. And I just fell in love with it. I mean, and particularly when I began working at this psychiatric hospital with schizophrenics. And so, you know, no one in show business knew that I did this. And I was taking my classes at night at Pepperdine. So I had this secret life, like Batman. By day, I was a screenwriter. By night, I was in classes reading about psychopathology and learning about, you know, brain chemistry and all this other stuff. And finally, I'd gotten to the place where if I wanted to, I could get my master's and then I could become an intern and really start going for it. Because in California, to be a therapist takes 6 years to your license because you need 3,000 hours as an intern that are supervised before you can even sit for the test. 3,000 hours
what
is a lot.
What is 3,000 hours in terms of years?
About 3.5 years.
Is it really?
Yeah. It takes a long time to become a therapist. Because,
well, it should.
And it should. And because once you have those hours, then you apply to take the test. And the first time you can do it then is like 8 or 9 months later. And then after when I did it, after you take the written test, you apply to take the oral exam. And that takes another 8 or 9 months. So what they do is they sneak another couple thousand hours of clinical practice into you before you get your license. But nobody in show business knew I was doing this, you know. And I still wasn't sure. Because I had lots of friends who were getting their PhDs in comparative literature and stuff, going back to school, because to be quite honest, show business can be a lot of fun and it's very interesting. But if you have certain intellectual interests, it's not the place for you.
It ain't getting satisfied.
Yeah,
there.
You know what I'm saying?
Right?
It just isn't. You know, you're rewriting jokes for Will Ferrell over and over again, and a part of you is going, God, what did Sartre say again? You know, so you'd be surprised how many people in the industry are, you know, have
hungry heads.
You have hungry heads. I mean, hell, Jeff Berg, the president of ICM, one of the biggest agencies in the world, when I knew him, was at UCLA getting his PhD in comparative literature. because if you're an agent all day long, there's nothing feeding you intellectually, So the thing is, it wasn't that unusual to be doing that. What was unusual is I was taking it seriously as a potential career change. And then I had one of those road to Damascus experiences. Literally, I was sitting in a restaurant with a producer, and he was trying to talk me into writing this film for him. And I kept looking at my watch because I was late for the psychiatric hospital. And so when I was driving down La Cienega toward the hospital, I said, "What's wrong with this picture? I couldn't wait for the lunch to be over. I couldn't wait to get here." And I said, "I'm going to change my life." So I took all the tests.
And what age is this?
I'm about, I guess, 39.
Oh, wow.
Something like that, 39,
wow.
40. And so when I finally got my license, and I must preface here, there was a little thing in the middle here that had a lot to do with it. While I was a screenwriter and before I started taking these classes, I was working on a film for Robert Redford. He was going to play a mountain climber named Willie Unsold. And these were in the days when the studios were very flush with money. And if you were going to work on and Redford was such a huge star that his development company had a ton of money too. So Columbia Pictures gave me a credit card and said, "Go learn about mountain climbing." And so I went all over the world and climbed mountains.
Oh, such a rough
life, right?
Geez.
And taking mountain climbers and mountain guides to dinner because, they don't eat real food. So for them to go to a restaurant was pretty exciting. And it was all on Columbia's dime, And so I ended up living in Nepal for 3 months and living in the Himalayas. And I had this bizarre razor's edge kind of thing with meditation, and it's a long story. Anyway, it really contributed to the sense that I wanted to do something else with my life.
Because you came more in touch with
absolutely
yourself.
Yeah, and
got you away from Hollywood and
yeah. I mean, when you're climbing the Grand Teton and you're holding on with one hand 8,000 feet above a crevasse, you go, you don't really worry about whether my agent returns my phone call or not, And so I really felt it had a lot to do with shaking me out of a kind of torpor that I had been feeling for the last couple years as a screenwriter. So I think that had, a great deal to do with it.
What happened to the movie? Never got made?
Never got made. What happened to all movies? The thing is, most movies don't get made. And the reasons...
But screenwriters make money whether the movie
paid whether it gets made or not. I mean, so you could go 3 or 4 or 5 years. Most screenwriters go about 3 to 5 years between scripts getting made. But they're getting paid to write scripts, throughout that 5-year period, and then the script's given to someone else to rewrite. I mean, the thing is, now in Hollywood, it's very tough to get a solo credit on a screenplay because so many other writers are brought in. I think the most famous example is Tootsie. Tootsie had like 23 writers, something like that.
What do the credits look like? I bet were there lawsuits about it?
No, the Guild has rules. I think you can only have a couple people. So I think it's like screenplay by Larry Gelbart and I forget who else, and then story by someone that, But the reality is most of the work goes uncredited. But the people like for example, when they made Road to Perdition, the movie with Tom Hanks where he plays the bad guy, and his mentor was played by Paul Newman. So they were in Chicago shooting it, and Newman didn't like his dialogue. And one of my patients went to Chicago just to work on Newman's dialogue, and they paid him $250 a week. $250,000 a week.
What?
Just for Paul Newman's dialogue.
When you said $250, I thought, well, that can't be.
Yeah.
But $250,000 can't be either.
And
what?
So he didn't get credit. I mean, there were 8 or 9 writers on Road to Perdition, I forget. But I don't remember who got credit at the end. But most people don't. I mean, that's how it works in Hollywood. And if you're one of the big rewriters, you make a fortune. You make a real lot of money.
Good.
Yeah. But anyway, getting back to this.
Anyway, all right. Last time we left Dennis Palumbo, he was hanging on a mountain.
I was hanging on a mountain. But anyway, so I realized, after that lunch that I did want to change my life. So when I got my orals and passed them, and I got this license in the mail, and I was now a licensed psychotherapist. I could go in private practice. I could have patients. I called my agent, my manager, my lawyer, and my business manager, and I fired all of them in 10 minutes. and and they all said, well, what are you doing? I said, I'm leaving the business to be a therapist.
You mean none of those people knew? Still?
None of them knew.
Wow.
And so I went into private practice, and I thought, what do I know that other therapists don't know? And I thought, I know Hollywood. So my practice specializes in creative people in the entertainment industry. So I have
You got a
TV
large
writers.
pool there.
I have a large pool, and it's a wonderful practice.
Hollywood neurotics.
Well,
Oh, man.
that's not exactly
so he's
it.
gonna
Look,
be
of
big.
course they're
Yeah.
Hollywood neurotics because, it takes one to know one. I'm a Hollywood
Yeah.
neurotic. But the thing that I found is that we're talking about incredibly motivated people.
Yeah.
Very articulate, very interested in self-exploration. And, because of my background, if someone comes in and says, look, I have an anxiety attack every time I pitch to a network. Well, I pitch to 1,000 networks. I pitched 1,000
Been there.
times. So the very first thing is I can relate to what they're talking about. So for most of my patients, regardless of what their issue is, whether it's writer's block or anxiety or depression because of their careers slumping, whatever, within a matter of weeks, we're talking about their personal issues, because a writer's life affects that of everyone around them, and it's spread out now. I have directors and actors and composers and reporters, but mostly people who in some way do creative work in the entertainment industry.
Geez. Well, how lucky for you. Think of all the psychotherapists who have boring people.
That's right.
Because you have to sit there and listen to them. And I mean, you're such a talker. And I mean, it's not your job to talk a lot.
No, I don't say much at all.
No, you go, and you get to hear great stories. Because these people often are entertainers by
Well, in
personality.
fact, one of the things you have to do is really disabuse them of the notion that their
They have
job
to
is to
entertain
entertain me.
Yeah.
Especially the comedy writers.
Yeah.
For them to stay with a feeling
Yeah.
longer than 10 seconds without doing a joke about it is very... I mean, I had one of my patients...
Because that's a defensive mechanism.
Yeah, it's a defense. One of my patients is a voice character actor. And, you're talking to him about, some horrible event in his life, and all of a sudden you're talking to William Shatner. He starts becoming Bill Shatner, or he starts becoming...
Tweety Bird, whatever.
George from Seinfeld, And you have to always steer them, don't be funny, don't be, stay with... Because the thing is, when they were young... They weren't crazy. These were defense mechanisms that were appropriate
Exactly.
to get them through the crises, to get them through the trauma of their lives, to help them survive the dynamics in their childhood. So now all of a sudden, as adults, we're saying, no, take those away and just deal with stuff that every time you dealt with it as a child, it was a nightmare. So it is hard.
Well, that's like climbing mountains because that's scary.
Yeah, and so it is very terrifying. And I have a lot of respect for my patients in therapy because I know from my own, I mean, I've been in therapy on and off for years and years. Hey, I'm as neurotic and insecure as I ever was. I just don't hassle myself about it anymore.
There you go. Isn't that a nice place to get to?
Yes.
That's called acceptance, isn't it?
Well, that's what they tell me.
Okay.
Yeah. Besides, this is my radio voice. And, you said, well, you talk a lot. I'm actually an introvert disguised as an extrovert.
Guess what?
Yeah.
So am I.
Yeah. This is just an act.
No, me too.
I remember last year I was at a conference where I gave the keynote speech, and I brought my son along. It was in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, my teenage son, and he had never seen me work a room.
He never saw this guy.
And this guy came up, and I was getting laughs, and I was telling jokes, and I was, talking about writing and the psychology of creativity and stuff. And afterwards, he said, "Guy, you don't say beans at all."
I know, yeah, that's right. Do you know that's funny? Because the other day I was driving, and as usual, some woman's driving, and she's driving with one hand and yap, 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 yap. And I thought, what do people have to talk about so much? And then I thought, hey, you.
Yeah.
You get to talk in a different kind of a way. And see, when I'm off, I'm quiet.
Well, it was funny when I was a comedy writer and I would go to parties. I'm one of those guys that everyone's stunned when they found out I was a comedy writer.
Because you weren't funny.
I wasn't funny. I never made jokes. And B, after about 15 minutes, I would go and find the room that had all the books in it. And I would just look at all the bookshelves. And people go, where the hell did he go?
Well, see, you're healthier than me because if I'm at a party, I have to be in.
No, it's not my job to entertain these people.
Oh, how'd you get to that place? That's a good place. Woo!
A lot of work.
Okay. Geez.
But see, now on this show, it's my job to be entertaining.
That's right.
As much as possible.
No, and you are. You're a marvelous guest. Dennis Palumbo, Night Terrors is his book, and you know what? We're going to talk about that when we get back.
Stick around for more with Lynn Cullen live after this.
Go to BergBargains.com for great deals on gift cards from your favorite local restaurants, bars, museums, attractions, and shows. This week only, 40% off vouchers for Jerome Bettis Grill. Supplies are limited. BergBargains.com. Pittsburgh's best bargains. BergBargains.com.
What do you mean go when I'm swallowing? Go. Jeez. Okay.
Jesse, Mr.
Yeah, Jess. Boy, is she a toughie. Okay, here's what I'm supposed to talk about now.
Okay.
Paddle Without Pollution, which is actually something so marvelous. This is a group that care about our rivers. And they care mightily that the rivers are not as pristine as they should be. And 2 years ago, they started up this cleanup where anyone who wants to can get in a canoe and get in a kayak. You start from 3 separate places on one of the rivers. You all meet up at Point State Park. And in the interim, you have picked up all the garbage you see while you're paddling the river. Last year, they got over 4,000 pounds of this garbage from the 3 rivers. I'm here to tell you that you can be part of this event. You can have fun. You can be on the river. You can get some exercise. You can help clean the river. You can do all this wonderful stuff. When you get to the point, you're going to be entertained. There's going to be food and all that kind of stuff. And when is this? June 8th. June 8th, that's a Saturday, obviously coming up. And if you want to know more about it, paddlewithoutpollution.com is the place to go, and you can register there. It's a great idea. It gets bigger every year. Why don't you be part of it?
The traditional light bulb, a groundbreaking invention in 1879. It's time we switch to longer-lasting Energy Star light bulbs. They're more efficient than the old bulbs, like a text message is more efficient than a carrier pigeon. And they cut down on our energy costs. Because in our own groundbreaking age, we deserve a light bulb that saves us some cash. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Energy and the Ad Council.
Stick around for more with Lynn Cullen live after this.
But I said
You said no.
No, but what a funny idea, huh?
Oh, God. This guy's full of stories. Oh, my God, oh, my God, oh, my God. Okay, so I've read all this is the 3rd book in this series, which stars, the series stars this therapist.
Right. He's a psychologist named Daniel Rinaldi, and he's a trauma expert. And his specialty is treating the victims of violent crime. As a therapist myself, I spent 5 years in supervision with Robert Stollerow, who's one of the world's leading trauma experts. And so when I was looking for a specialty that would allow a therapist to be involved in crime, I thought, what a better way to do it than what if he's a guy who treats victims of crime, people who've been carjacked or who were the bank teller when the bank was robbed or who were kidnapped or whatever. And so even if they survived the event, they still got post-traumatic stress disorder, they've got survivor guilt and all that stuff. And so I created this character, Daniel Rinaldi, and he and his wife were mugged years ago, and she was killed in the mugging and he survived.
Right.
And his survivor guilt sent him into a tailspin, into a depression, didn't even work for 2 years. When he finally came out of it, he began working for the Pittsburgh police, helping them to treat victims of violent crime. And it's a way for me to have an amateur who ends up, despite himself, getting involved in the investigation. And so the first novel was Mirror Image, and the second one was called Fever Dream, and the third one is Night Terrors, and they're all published by Poison Pen Press.
And you are going to be at...
And I'm having the book launch tomorrow, which is Saturday, May 18th, at the wonderful independent bookstore, Mystery Lovers Bookshop, which is in Oakmont, PA. And
right on the main drag.
Right on the main drag and on Allegheny River Boulevard. And I'm very excited. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., we're having coffee, pastries, and conversation with me. And even if you don't like me, there's very good coffee and very good pastries.
And a marvelous bookstore.
And it's a terrific bookstore, which should be supported anyway.
Exactly.
Because independent bookstores are really on the way out. So
Here.
this is a wonderful bookstore and really deserves your support.
You know what occurred to me when you talked about that talking about your main character as a trauma specialist dealing with people who have been victims of violent crime. What a weird thing that the founder of that bookstore, Mary Alice Gorman,
was a victim's advocate.
And in fact headed the Center for Victims of Violent Crime.
I know.
Here. And it was because of her I ended up on the board for a while. It's how I knew Mary Alice. But how odd.
I know that, and I think that's why she responded so strongly to my books, too.
Wow.
Isn't that funny?
It is. It
the
just
coincidence
struck
of that
me.
is amazing. Yeah.
It just... Okay, I wrote down a quote here when I was... And this is something that the profiler says. The FBI profiler says in the book. A perfect rationality is not incompatible with psychosis. I found that fascinating.
Well, if you read research serial killers, the thing is, there's a wonderful old joke about a guy whose car loses a tire. And he has no bolts for this tire. And his car has broken down outside of an insane asylum, a mental health facility. And he doesn't know what to do because he doesn't have any bolts. And
yeah,
a guy
but there's plenty of nuts.
Yes. And this patient leans out the window and says, why don't you take one bolt from each of the other 3 tires and put it on the 4th one? And the guy does it and says, that's really great. How did you know that? He said, mister, I'm crazy, not stupid. Well, that's what we're talking about.
Okay.
If you look at people that seem psychotic, who have gone into a movie theater and shot up the place or whatever, but they've also booby-trapped their apartment. They go in with extra rounds. They're wearing body armor. They find the midnight showing, which they know all the fans are going to go to. In other words, outside of the either delusion or mania or whatever's going on that is creating the impulse to do this is a perfect rationality. Right. In other words, how to get away with the crime, how to commit the crime, how to survive it. Even if you're suicidal, you're still picking when you do it. It's like the important thing to remember is that a person who's a sociopath knows the difference between right and wrong. He just doesn't care. There's no remorse. And you look at certain killers like Ted Bundy or the BTK killer. They're very smart and very bright. These are the ones who send letters to the police going, you're a little off track yet, They're playing games. They think of themselves, actually, they have a kind of grandiosity about their intelligence.
Okay, they're obviously mentally ill. This is an issue I have. Oh, come on. Really?
Yeah, I think they are too. It's just that, my feeling, it's a very funny thing because the law believes in personal responsibility, and psychology says that sometimes people act outside of their own volition. And so what do you do? It's very tough.
If you're born with missing whatever would make you a regular human being and not a sociopath, should you be put to death?
No, that's eugenics. I think that's a just terrible idea. In fact, one of the things that makes me so blue about I forget the guy who did the Aurora, the shooting with Kathy Giffords. I forget his name. And then the one who did the movie theater is that it continues the idea in the public's head that schizophrenics are homicidal maniacs. Schizophrenics 99.9% of the time do only damage to themselves. Right. They're not crazy killers and all that stuff. I mean, that's just not what they are. But occasionally someone who hears voices or is delusional acts out on them, like Son of Sam. He thought he was getting orders to kill through his neighbor's dog. Yeah, I mean that's what
he thinks.
and it's so funny. But it's the reality is that's what he thought, and I think it's up in the air as to how responsible these people should be. They should be punished for it, but how responsible they are for their actions is, up for grabs, and it's above my pay grade to decide what that is.
Okay.
But I certainly do think that what my Barnes character says about a perfect rationality is right.
Okay, so you can be a psychotic and be perfectly rational.
Because, see, remember, too, what keeps a person from killing people is empathy and connection. You can be perfectly rational and not have much empathy. We all know people like that. Brilliant people who can't empathize with people. Or people high up on the Asperger's scale who are idiot savants, who are, brilliant classical pianists or can do incredibly advanced complex math, but can't read a social cue to save their life. That person's perfectly rational, but they're not capable of functioning in society. So it's really very murky territory here.
Well, how much research did you have to do on serial killers? So if one of your main characters was this...
A profiler. Yeah, I read some books that profilers have written, and I did some research on serial killers themselves, particularly the idea that there's a kind of building of tension.
Why are they mostly male? I mean, overwhelmingly male.
Oh, gosh, I don't know.
Why is that with you guys?
Why are most perpetrators of most things mostly male?
Male.
Yeah, I mean, males, I guess, have the, I don't know. It's the aggressive gene.
It's testosterone.
Who knows? Testosterone, the limbic leave. I don't know. It's hard to know. I do know that when there are occasionally female serial killers, like Mary Speck, the nurse who killed, it's really surprising.
It is.
It's
always
very
shocks
surprising.
you.
Yeah.
So, did it get in your head when you were doing the research? No.
Not really. I think I was mostly worried about making all of it make sense. Since my primary goal is I like stories with great characters. Even though people always compliment me on the twists and turns in my plot, I'm not that interested in that. What I'm more interested is, I love the character of the FBI profiler, Lyle Barnes.
I do too.
And his interaction with my hero is much more interesting to me. Their conversations were my favorite part of the book to write.
Yeah, I had a crush on him.
Yeah, I've had a couple people say that. Yeah.
I did. I had a crush on him big
Well, you know
time.
who I had in mind? I was thinking of Clint Eastwood.
Of course you were.
Yeah.
Because that's what exactly I was just going to say.
That's who in my mind.
Clint Eastwood should play it.
He was Clint Eastwood from In the Line of Fire. That's who he was.
Right, exactly.
And I thought, and see, one of the things I do is I have in my mind who I think the person is, and it makes it a lot easier. I think that's from my old screenplay writing days.
How do police must not like these books because they always look like
well, that's the deal.
incompetence.
Whenever you have an amateur, I try to be really good to my police characters. I mean, I have a lot of fun with Harry Polk, but I think he's a good cop.
He's a good cop.
And Eleanor is a great
cop. Fantastic
Yeah,
cop.
She's a great cop.
Yeah.
I have a little problem with their bosses.
Yeah. Are you aware of what's going on here at the Pittsburgh Police Department?
Yeah, between the mayor and the chief of police, I thought, my God,
because this book it's the Pittsburgh Police.
Yeah,
and
it all takes place in Pittsburgh.
And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I wonder if Dennis knows what's going on.
Well, you have to remember, too, a book is written about a year or a year and a half before it comes out. So I wrote this, 14 months ago or something. So I didn't know about any of this. But yeah, it's a pretty interesting time
Sometimes
in Pittsburgh right now.
Truth can be stranger than fiction.
Oh, yes,
who
it
knows
can.
what's going on? Gee whiz. Hey, I'm always, when I'm reading your books, I find little things where I think, that couldn't be, because you're 40 years out of Pittsburgh,
right.
And you might have some geography thing a little askew.
Oh, God, yeah.
Well, here's one I found for
good.
you, okay?
I always get this from Pittsburgh readers,
Well, of
by the way.
course.
I get these emails going, you can't go left on this.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, look, I'm 40 years out of town. I got a map in front of me. I'm doing the best I can.
I'm going to annoy you. Okay, so here's mine. Where did I wrote it down? You have Lyle Barnes hailing a cab.
Yes.
You can't hail and you know that.
I know, but he had to be able to do it. You know, there's a wonderful story about James Ellroy, a wonderful writer, a wonderful crime writer, James Ellroy. He wrote L.A. Confidential and a bunch of other books. And he was giving a speech one time, and he stood up. He said, before I give my speech, is there anyone in here who knows about guns, like caliber and bullets and all that stuff?
Yeah.
And about 8 hands rose. He said, okay, get the hell out. He said, this is fiction. I make it up. I don't care how many bullets a gun has. You know, and I'm with him. I think I get about 90% of it right. And every once in a while, I'll call a friend of mine here in Pittsburgh, and I go, are they still, what's happened to the Penn Hotel? Oh, it's labeled for demolition. Okay, good. You know, because I don't want to have someone living there, you know. So, but it literally, I'm so stunned by how many Pittsburghers email me.
It's so much fun. But you know what? If you're a Pittsburgher, it's so much fun to read your books because you can, you know, and when you're reading a book, you're seeing it. And with your books, obviously, we can really see it. One more thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Don't get mad.
Oh, no. I think it's cool.
You have a corner bar in Wilkinsburg.
Yeah.
It's dry.
It's dry. There you go. That's good to know for the next one.
Although they just, I think, had a referendum or something where they were thinking of
really,
and it.
Wow, it's dry. Well, see,
Wilkinsburg
I should have called.
Dry.
Yeah.
Is dry. Okay, those are the only two things
Listen,
I'm going to tell you about.
that's amazing. I get many more. That's all right.
Okay, here's the other thing. In this book, Rinaldi. No, it's not Rinaldi. It's, I think, Barnes who who the hell keeps talking about a poet named Jack Gilbert?
Lyle Barnes. Jack Gilbert's his favorite poet.
Okay. I didn't know from Jack Gilbert.
I know most people didn't.
Okay,
he is from Pittsburgh. He just died, unfortunately, about 6 months ago, and he had a number of readings last year, and Knopf had just come out with Random House had just come out with a collection of his poems, and he has been a national award winner and stuff. Most people don't know poets. Well, that's one of the things that, you know, that's why Lyle Barnes is always saying to Rinaldi, you know, son, your education is sorely lacking.
That's right.
Is that his favorite poet is from Pittsburgh, a guy named Jack Gilbert, and I even quote a Gilbert poem in the book.
Yes, you do.
And
I thought, I've got to look up Jack Gilbert. Well, you know, probably people will, especially here.
They were thrilled when I called Random House and said I want to use a poem, and they said, "Oh, well, you have to get the rights and stuff." And I said, "Yeah, I want to use Jack Gilbert's poetry." And they were so thrilled because you know, anything that popularizes. But I also like the idea that a real tough as nails, no nonsense FBI profiler loved poetry.
Right.
And that when the FBI, when they think he's a suspect, scour his computer, they find all these online poetry magazines, which you would not expect from an FBI profiler.
Yes, but from Clint Eastwood,
you would. But see, that's like Clint Eastwood playing jazz in in The Line of Fire,
or in fact, you know, writing.
Yeah, he writes
jazz and music, and
if you see his biopic on Bird, he wrote all the incidental music on it. He's very, very talented guy, and he underplays his intellect. He's one of those guys whose public persona. He doesn't want to scare off the public, but he's actually much smarter and more intellectual.
No, I know.
Than he lets on.
Despite his embarrassing little episode at the Republican convention.
Well, that was a mistake on Clint's part.
Jeez.
Yeah, that was a mistake on Clint's part.
Oh, man.
But remember, you know, he's an old guy.
He was but when he was a young guy, he was a Republican.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
or are you saying he's an old guy and that he did? Yeah, well, you know, he does what he wants.
He does what he wants to do. Yeah. It ended up not helping the GOP too much, I think, but
it delighted Democrats. Like me.
I know.
Loved it. Okay, one other thing. One of Rinaldi's dear friends is a guy who owns a bar that he frequents and was a former.
Oh yes.
What?
From another book.
Yeah.
Oh, you have it. Oh, yeah. You like the former. No,
You're
he's
talking about,
schizophrenic.
he's a schizophrenic. Noah Fry. There is a bar called Noah's Ark, which is a converted coal barge, which is moored on 2nd Avenue, and Noah Fry is the bartender and runs the place with his girlfriend Charlene. He doesn't really own it. It's owned by a retired businessman who liked Noah so much he kind of left him in charge. And Noah is a paranoid schizophrenic, and was a patient at this private psychiatric hospital where my character Daniel Rinaldi worked as an intern when he was training to be a therapist, and now they're friends. And I like Noah. Noah's like the Greek chorus of my book, where he's the truth teller, but he's also crazy as a loon. But
he's medicated.
He is so medicated that he doesn't quite have the delusions anymore. If he goes off his medications, he's back having hallucinations and delusions of persecution. Very horrifying. But he's also the one who, says, "Hey, I saw you on TV," and if Daniel says, "Well, it's not as much fun as you'd think," he go, "Hey, don't worry, the camera adds 10 pounds," He's so cute. And the other thing he said in Night Terrors that I love, my editor cracked up, is when Daniel Rinaldi keeps getting on CNN because he keeps talking about these cases. And at one point, Noah Fry says to him, "Look, next time you're on camera, I love you, but 2 words, Grecian formula." And but Noah also is the truth teller. I mean, he's the one that says, "What are you doing hanging with cops? What are you doing this in your life? Why don't you obviously date this woman that you like?"
Exactly.
So even though he's ostensibly crazy, he's like the guy in the joke. I may be crazy, but I'm not stupid. Exactly. And that's who Noah is.
Is it kosher for, in real life, that these two would become pals after therapy?
The way it works is it's unlikely that you would become friends only because you're so different. But Noah is based on a guy that I knew when I worked at the psychiatric hospital who was like this. He was very funny, charismatic. All the female patients loved him. And he was so... all the actually female therapists loved them too. He used to walk them to their cars at night because he would protect them. He was sort of a trustee. And he was not a pianist. He was an elevator repairman, which the thought of a schizophrenic elevator repairman
scares the hell out of me.
It just is so funny to me. But it was one of those things when the insurance ran out. He went, "Well, all right, see you guys. Time to go get some women." And he would walk out the door. And he was so alive compared to all of us pallid therapists. We're all in all the types, but he was so alive, so vital, a lot of testosterone, so I always thought he was going to be a character someday. But seriously, in terms of your practice, you're allowed to maintain a friend relationship with a former patient after 2 years have gone by.
Oh, okay.
Now, I don't think that's enough time, and I have a policy not to do that with former patients. My experience is sometimes a patient will terminate, and 3 or 4 years later, they'll call me. Their marriage has just ended.
They want to come back.
And they want to come back into therapy. Well, you can't do that if you went to the track together.
That's right.
So I always think I'm their therapist until they tell me I'm not their therapist, even if they terminate. You know what I mean? Okay. I just don't want to mix that up. And I've had enough times where former patients of years ago call me that I'm glad that we have maintained the therapeutic
so that you can
relationship, so I can still be there for them in the way they need. But for the purposes of my story, I mean, years had passed since Daniel was an intern. It seemed okay to me. And I just wanted his best friend to be a schizophrenic. I'd never seen that in a story before. So I thought, that's great.
Oh, he's wonderful. I wish it existed because I want to go in there.
Oh, the Noah's Ark?
I do. I want it. It ain't there, really.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I wanted to write a book where my agent said when he finished Night Terrors, he said, "I hated leaving the world of this book."
Yeah.
And I wanted to write a book where I wanted to be in the world of the book. I want that to be my bar.
Well, I love this one the most of all.
And most people do. Most people do.
This is a beaut. Night Terrors. And you can not only buy it tomorrow at Mystery Lovers Bookshop, but you can talk to this guy up close and personal. 10 a.m.?
Yeah, 10 a.m. at the Mystery Lovers Bookshop. It's on Allegheny River Boulevard in
Oakmont,
Pennsylvania.
All
It's
right.
a terrific bookstore, too. And I would call ahead. The new owner, Lori, would like people to make reservations if they
really?
could. Yeah, it's free, but I think they want to know how much pastry to put.
Okay. Well, then be polite and call ahead. Or if you don't eat all the pastry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you're just going to show up from the street, which is fine with me, don't eat all the pastry.
Yeah. What a pleasure, as always.
Oh, thank you for having me, Lynn.
Thank you. I look forward to number 4, which is probably
please.
in the works.
Oh, yeah, except all I know is the first sentence.
All right. We'll find out the rest. In due course, we'll wait impatiently.
And so will I.
Indeed. Hey, you guys, you have a great weekend. Go Pens! Go Pirates! They're 7 games over 500! In case you didn't know. Okay? Toodaloo.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.